My name is Maria. I am 68 years old, and I carry memories that are heavier than any burden I could have imagined in my youth. Today, I want to open my heart and share my story with you, a story of pain, betrayal, and survival. Please listen closely, not just with your ears but with your heart, because what I went through is something no woman should ever endure. Maybe, by telling it, someone out there will find strength in my scars. Stay with me until the very end, because every twist in my journey carries a lesson, and I want you to truly understand the depth of what I survived. The church bells rang loud that morning, echoing across the small town like they were announcing the happiest day of my life. I stood at the altar in my white dress, trembling but smiling. My groom, David, was looking at me with eyes full of love. Everyone was smiling, clapping, and waiting for us to exchange vows. But just when the priest asked, "Who gives this woman to be married?" my father, Simeone, stepped forward. Instead of blessing me, he grabbed my arm so tightly that I felt his nails dig into my skin. His face was red with anger. "You dare to marry without telling him the truth?" Simeone's voice roared in the silent church. "Tell him now, or I will." I froze. My lips trembled, and my heart beat so fast I thought it would burst. David frowned, confused. "What truth?" he asked, his voice shaking. My father's next words shattered the moment. "This wedding cannot happen.
She is not who she says she is."
"Maria, tell him who you really are, or I will tell everyone." The entire church gasped. I could barely breathe. David turned to me, his eyes wide, waiting for an answer. My father's grip tightened on my arm, his face twisted in rage. "You will not walk into this marriage with lies," he spat. Then he leaned close, his voice dropping into a venomous whisper loud enough for everyone to hear. "Tell him about the blood that runs in your veins, Maria. Tell him whose daughter you really are." I felt the ground spin beneath me. The truth, the secret I had carried my whole life, was about to be forced into the open. And David, my husband-to-be, was staring at me like a stranger. But before I could speak, before I could even find words, David shouted, "What are you talking about?" The church was silent, everyone waiting. My father smirked darkly, ready to reveal it. And then he said it. "She is not just my daughter. She is the daughter of a man I once swore to destroy. The man who ruined our family. The man who—" The rest of his words were drowned out by cries and gasps. My knees buckled. The entire church was spinning. And David's face turned pale, like his whole world had just collapsed. That was the moment everything changed. But to understand how I ended up standing there, broken in my wedding dress, with my father's grip on me and David looking like his heart had been ripped apart, I have to take you back. Back to the days when everything seemed normal. When I still believed my family was like every other family. When I thought love alone could protect me. My name is Maria. I grew up in a small village, surrounded by whispers. My father, Simeone, was a respected man in public, always dressed well, always carrying himself like he was above everyone else. But behind closed doors, he was a storm. He had a temper so violent that even my mother, Sandra, lived in fear of him. When I was little, my happiest memories were with my mother. She would hum lullabies while braiding my hair, her hands soft and gentle. But sometimes, in the middle of our laughter, we would hear the heavy footsteps of Simeone approaching. And suddenly, her smile would disappear, and she'd whisper, "Stay quiet, Maria. Don't make him angry." I didn't understand why back then. But as I grew older, I began to see the cracks. Simeone would shout at Sandra for the smallest things. If the food was too cold, if she looked at him the wrong way, or even if she smiled too much. He carried a darkness inside him that we all felt, but none of us dared to question. When I turned 16, things changed. That was the first time I saw my father not just as a man with a temper, but as someone who carried secrets. I overheard him one night, yelling on the phone. His voice was filled with hatred. "You ruined me once, and I will never forgive you," he growled. "One day, your blood will pay for what you did." I had no idea who he was talking to. but something about his words made my skin crawl. Meanwhile, in school, I met David. He was gentle, kind, and the complete opposite of my father. He would carry my books, walk me home, and tell me stories about his dreams. Being around him felt like a breath of fresh air. With him, I believed I could escape the darkness of my father's house. But Simeone hated David from the very beginning. He said David wasn't good enough, that his family wasn't rich enough, that marrying him would be a disgrace. Every time David came around, Simeone would glare at him, his jaw tight, his fists clenched. Yet, David didn't give up. He promised me that one day we would be free from my father's shadow. And I believed him. But my father wasn't done. He always found ways to remind me that I was his, that I belonged to him no matter what. Sometimes his punishments were small, a harsh word, a slap. Other times, they were worse. He wanted control over me, and he made sure I never forgot it. As my wedding day drew closer, I thought maybe, just maybe, he had accepted it. But deep down, I knew Simeone wasn't a man who forgave or forgot. And I was right. Because on the very day that was supposed to be my happiest, he dragged the darkest family secret into the light. The whispers in the church grew louder. Guests were murmuring, "What does he mean? What blood is he talking about? Whose daughter is she?" I could feel my chest tightening, like I couldn't breathe. David's eyes that once only held love, were now filled with fear. My father's grip was unrelenting, and I knew I couldn't keep the secret any longer. But just as I opened my mouth to speak, something even more shocking happened. The heavy wooden church doors burst open. A tall man walked in, his face shadowed, but his voice clear as day. "Don't listen to him, Maria," the man shouted. "You deserve to know the truth, but from me, not from him." Gasps filled the room. My father's face twisted with rage. And that was how my wedding turned into chaos. The church doors slammed shut behind the tall man, and the echo sent chills down my spine. All eyes turned toward him. His suit was slightly wrinkled, his face hardened with years of pain, and his eyes, sharp, piercing, were locked on my father. "Get out," Simeone bellowed, his voice trembling with rage. His grip on my arm tightened so much that I winced in pain. "You have no right to be here." The man didn't flinch. Instead, he walked slowly down the aisle, each step heavy with determination. The guests leaned closer, whispering and gasping, their eyes darting between Simeone, me, and this stranger. Finally, the man stopped in front of me. His voice was steady, but it carried years of hidden sorrow. "Maria, I am your real father." The world seemed to stop. My heart thundered in my chest. My knees felt weak, and David reached out as if to hold me steady, but even his touch felt far away. What are you saying?" I stammered, my voice shaking.
"You heard me," the man said.
His eyes softened as he looked at me. "I am the man who gave you life. Simeone is not your father.
He stole you from me."
The entire church erupted into chaos. Gasps, shouts, and cries filled the air. Some of the women covered their mouths in shock. The priest looked frozen, his Bible slipping from his hands. David turned to me, his face pale. "Maria, is this true?" His voice cracked. I shook my head, helplessly. I don't know." Simeone roared. "Lies. All lies. Don't listen to him." He pushed the man back, but the stranger stood his ground. "No, Simeone," the man snapped. "You can't bury the truth forever. She deserves to know. Everyone deserves to know." The man's eyes glistened as he looked at me again. "Your mother, Sandra, loved me. We were together before Simeone forced his way into her life. He hated me, Maria. He wanted to destroy me. And when you were born," his voice broke, "he took you. He raised you as his own to keep you from me. My mother, Sandra." My heart ached. All those times I had seen her eyes fill with tears when Simeone yelled at her. All those moments when she held me close, whispering, "One day, you'll understand." Was this what she meant? Tears blurred my vision. "Mother knew." I whispered. "She knew," the man said. But Simeone threatened her life. She never stopped loving you, Maria. She just couldn't protect you. David's hand slipped from mine. He staggered back, as if the weight of the truth was too heavy. His voice was low, but filled with hurt. Maria, why didn't you tell me? I didn't know. I cried, my voice cracking. I swear, David, I didn't know. But the damage was done. The guests were murmuring louder, their voices sharp with judgment. All these years. She's not Simeone's child? Then who is she really? Simeone's fury boiled over. He grabbed the man by the collar and shoved him against the altar. You dare come here and ruin my daughter's wedding, he hissed. I should have destroyed you long ago. The man shoved Simeone back. You already destroyed enough lives. You can't control her anymore. The tension was unbearable. I couldn't stop shaking. My wedding day had turned into a battlefield. Then suddenly my mother, Sandra, who had been seated quietly in the front pew, stood up. Her face was pale, her hands trembling, but her voice was firm. Stop it. Both of you. She stepped forward, her eyes darting between Simeone and the man. The truth can't be hidden anymore. Maria has to know everything. Simeone's face twisted in rage. Sit down, Sandra, he barked. Or you'll regret it. But Sandra didn't sit down. She walked straight to me, took my hand, and whispered with tears in her eyes, It's true, Maria. Every word he said is true. My heart broke. Mother. David covered his face with his hands, whispering to himself, This can't be real. This can't be happening. But it was real. Too real. And then, before anyone could stop him, Simeone snapped. His hand shot out, and he slapped Sandra so hard that she fell to the ground in her wedding gown. The church screamed in shock. Enough of this nonsense. Simeone shouted, his voice echoing off the walls. This wedding is over. I dropped to my knees, cradling my mother in my arms. Mother, are you okay? Sandra's lips trembled as she whispered weakly, Maria, you must run. Before it's too late. But Simeone towered over us, his eyes blazing with madness. He reached into his coat, and to my horror, I saw the glint of metal. He had a gun. The church erupted in panic. Guests screamed and ducked under the pews. The priest shouted for help. David rushed forward, trying to shield me. And my father, no, the man I once thought was my father, pointed the gun at David. You won't take her from me, Simeone growled. If I can't control her, then no one will. The church fell silent, everyone frozen in terror. And that's when the gun went off. The gunshot cracked through the church like lightning splitting the sky. People screamed. The stained glass windows seemed to rattle, and the smell of gunpowder filled the air. My ears rang, my body froze, and for a moment, time stood still. I turned slowly, terrified of what I'd see. David staggered backward, his hand clutching his arm. Blood seeped through his sleeve, bright red against his white wedding shirt. He fell against the pew, gasping in pain. No! I screamed, running to him. My gown tangled around my legs, but I didn't care. I dropped beside him, grabbing his face. David, stay with me. Please stay with me. The guests scrambled toward the doors, crying and panicking. Some tripped over pews. Others shouted for someone to call the police. The priest was shouting prayers, trembling, clutching his cross as though it could protect him from the madness unraveling in front of us. Simeone stood there, his chest heaving, the gun still raised. His eyes weren't normal anymore. They were wild, empty, dangerous. Look what you made me do, Maria, he yelled. You forced my hand. You brought this disgrace on us. You shot him, I cried, tears streaming down my face. You tried to kill the man I love. My mother, Sandra, pulled herself to her feet, holding onto the altar for strength. Her cheek was bruised from the slap, her voice weak but determined. Simeone, stop this. You've done enough harm. Put the gun down before you ruin us all. But Simeone's rage only grew. He swung the gun toward her now. Don't you dare speak against me, Sandra. Don't you dare. The stranger, the man who claimed to be my real father, stepped forward, his hands raised. Simeone, enough. Don't do this. You've carried this hate for too long. It ends today. Simeone's laughter was low and chilling. Ends? No, it only begins today. She will never belong to you. She is mine. I held David's hand tighter as he winced in pain. Maria, run, he whispered, his face pale. Don't let him take you. But I couldn't leave him. My entire body trembled as I looked from David to my mother, to the man with the gun. The stranger moved closer. Maria deserves the truth. And I will not leave until she knows everything. Truth. Simeone spat. The truth will destroy her. The man's jaw tightened.
No.
The truth will set her free. The two men locked eyes, and I realized they weren't just enemies. There was a history between them that ran deeper than I could imagine. Before anyone could stop him, the stranger spoke again, his voice rising over the chaos. Maria, Simeone is right about one thing. The blood in your veins is not his. But there's more you need to know. I felt my chest tighten. More? What do you mean? The stranger hesitated, his lips trembling as if the words were heavy with years of silence. Finally, he said it. You are not only my daughter. You have a sister. A twin. Gasps filled the air again. Even David, despite his pain, stared at me with wide eyes. A twin? My mind spun. I could barely process the shock. Simeone snarled, Don't you dare bring her into this. His voice shook, his grip on the gun tightening. She deserves to know, the stranger shouted back. The room grew louder with whispers, fear, and disbelief. My mother's eyes filled with tears, her lips trembling. It's true, she whispered. Maria, you had a sister. I shook my head. No, this isn't real. I would have known. Sandra's tears spilled down her cheeks. We hid her from you because Simeone demanded it. The stranger's voice cracked with emotion. I searched for her all my life. She was taken from me the day you both were born. I never stopped looking. I clutched my chest, my breath shallow.
Where is she?
Where is my sister? The stranger opened his mouth to answer. But before he could speak, Simeone roared like a wounded animal. His finger twitched on the trigger, his gun now aimed directly at the stranger's head. You'll never tell her. You'll never take her from me. And in that instant, everyone in the church screamed as Simeone pulled the trigger again. The sound of the shot echoed, and the stranger collapsed to the floor. Blood pooled beneath him. The sound of the second gunshot tore through the church, silencing every voice. For one unbearable heartbeat, there was nothing but smoke in the air and the heavy thud of a body hitting the floor. The stranger, the man who claimed to be my real father, lay motionless at the foot of the altar. Blood pooled beneath him, spreading across the polished tiles like a dark shadow swallowing the light. I screamed. My throat felt raw, but the sound tore out of me anyway.
No.
No, please no. I scrambled forward, my white dress dragging through the blood as I knelt beside him. His eyes were still open, filled with pain but not yet empty. He grabbed my wrist weakly. His voice was faint, fading with each breath. Maria, listen, your sister, she's alive. Tears blurred my vision.
Where is she?
Please tell me. His lips trembled, forming words I could barely hear. Find her before he does. His gaze flicked toward Simeone, and then his body went limp in my arms. The church erupted in chaos again. Some guests ran for the exit, others cried and shouted for help. The priest dropped to his knees, mumbling frantic prayers, while my mother, Sandra, clutched her face with both hands, sobbing uncontrollably. Maria, step away from him. Simeone barked, his gun still raised, his eyes burning with madness. I spun toward him, my tears blurring into anger. You killed him. You murdered him in cold blood. He was nothing. Simeone spat. A liar, a thief. You will forget him, Maria. You will forget all of this. I will never forget, I shouted back. My voice shook, but my heart burned with a new fire. You can't control me anymore. Simeone's expression darkened. He stepped closer, towering over me. Don't talk back to me, girl. You are mine. Everything you are belongs to me. David groaned from the pew where he still clutched his wounded arm. His voice was weak, but firm. Maria, don't let him win. I rushed back to David's side, cradling his face. His skin was pale, sweat dripping down his forehead. My heart ached seeing him in pain. We need to get you to a hospital, I whispered urgently. You're losing too much blood. The guests were too terrified to help, frozen between fear of Simeone and pity for us. My mother crawled toward me, her eyes pleading. Maria, listen to me. We have to leave. It's not safe here. But Simeone blocked the aisle, gun in hand, his voice thundering. No one leaves. Not until she hears the truth. My blood ran cold. What truth? What else could there possibly be? His lips curled into a bitter smile. You think that man was your father? You think you're free of me? No, Maria. You'll never be free. Because the truth is darker than you can imagine. He paused, letting his words sink in, savoring my fear. Then he said it. You were never meant to be born. The words sliced through me. I stared at him, unable to breathe. What are you saying? Simeone's eyes glowed with cruelty. Your mother wasn't supposed to have you. You were the result of betrayal. She chose him over me once, and when I found out, I swore to make her suffer. Taking you as my own was my revenge. You were my punishment to her. Sandra let out a broken sob, collapsing to the floor. Stop it, Simeone.
Please stop.
But he didn't stop. His voice rose higher, echoing through the ruined church. You were never my daughter. You were my weapon, a tool to destroy the man she loved. And now, if you don't obey me, I will destroy you too. I felt my knees weaken, my entire world spinning. All this time, I thought I was his daughter. All this time, I thought my pain came from his cruelty alone. But now I knew I was born into vengeance, raised in lies. David gripped my hand tightly, his voice strained. Maria, don't believe him. You are not his tool. You are more than that. My mother crawled toward me, wrapping her arms around me, whispering through her tears. You are my child. You are love. Don't ever let his words change that. For a brief moment, the chaos softened. I clung to her warmth, to David's touch, to the faint hope that I wasn't what Simeone said I was. But Simeone wasn't done. His face twisted into something even darker. He pointed the gun directly at me this time. If you won't belong to me, he hissed, then no one will. The church froze. Every guest stopped breathing. My mother screamed, throwing herself in front of me. And then, the church doors burst open again. This time, it wasn't one man, it was two uniformed police officers, their guns drawn. Drop your weapon, one of them shouted. For the first time that day, Simeone hesitated. His eyes darted between the officers, me, and the man lying dead on the floor. And then, with a sudden, wild move, Simeone grabbed Sandra by the arm, yanking her close and pressing the gun to her head. The church erupted in cries of horror. Stay back, Simeone roared. If anyone comes closer, she dies. What would you do if your wedding day turned into a nightmare like Maria's? With secrets revealed, blood spilled, and her own father holding her mother hostage, the story is only getting darker. Do you think Maria will find the strength to fight back, or will Simeone's rage destroy everything she loves? Don't miss what happens next in the next chapter. If you're hooked already, make sure you like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next part of Maria's shocking story. And tell us in the comments, what would you do if you discovered such a secret on your wedding day? The church had fallen into a suffocating silence. Simeone's arm was locked around my mother's neck, his gun pressed hard against her temple. Sandra whimpered, her tears soaking the lace of her dress, while Simeone's eyes darted wildly between the two police officers standing at the doors. Drop your weapon, sir, one of the officers shouted, his stance steady, his gun trained on Simeone. No, Simeone barked, dragging Sandra backward. Nobody moves or she dies. I mean it. His voice cracked with a terrifying mix of fear and rage. The congregation cowered behind pews, whispering prayers, some covering their children's eyes. The priest clutched his cross to his chest, muttering, "Lord, have mercy." I stood frozen in the center aisle, torn between running to my mother and keeping still. My chest heaved, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. "Father, please," I cried, my voice breaking. "Let her go. This isn't the way." Simeone's face twisted. "Don't call me that," he shouted. "I am not your father, remember? Isn't that what you all wanted to hear?" The officers advanced a step, calm but firm. "You don't want to do this, Simeone."
Put the gun down.
"Nobody else has to get hurt." "Nobody else?" Simeone's laugh was hollow, bitter. "I've already lost everything. You think I care if more blood is spilled today?" Sandra sobbed, gasping for air as his grip tightened. "Please don't do this. Not here. Not in front of Maria." Her words seemed to pierce him for just a moment. His jaw tightened, his eyes flickered with something, regret, pain, or maybe just madness. But then he shook his head violently.
No.
She needs to learn. She needs to see that love is nothing but weakness. That family is nothing but betrayal. "Stop it," I screamed, stepping forward despite the officers motioning for me to stay back. "You've destroyed enough. You're not teaching me anything except how much of a monster you are." His face turned red, veins bulging at his temples. "Monster?" he roared. "You think I'm the monster?" "No, Maria. The monster was the man lying dead at your feet. The man you dare call your real father. He's the reason your life was cursed." The officers tried again, their voices steady. "Simeone, this isn't going to end the way you think. Let her go, and we can talk." But Simeone only sneered. "Talk. There's nothing left to say." Then, in a sudden move, he began dragging Sandra toward the side exit of the church. The officers shouted for him to stop, but he waved the gun wildly. "If anyone follows me, she dies," he shouted. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. My mother's terrified eyes locked with mine as he pulled her away. "Maria," she screamed. "Stay strong. Don't let him." Her words were cut off as Simeone yanked her through the doorway. The church doors slammed shut behind them. For a moment, all that remained was silence, broken only by David's weak groans as he slumped against the pew, clutching his bleeding arm. I rushed to him, my hands trembling. "David, hold on. Please don't leave me." His face was pale, but he managed a weak smile. "I'm not going anywhere." The officers rushed to the doors, one speaking quickly into his radio. "Suspect has taken a hostage. We need backup now." I looked from the officers to David, then to the spot where my real father's lifeless body still lay. My entire world was unraveling, my wedding dress stained with blood and tears. One of the officers turned to me. "Miss, you need to stay here. It's not safe." But I shook my head fiercely.
No.
He is my mother. I can't just sit here and do nothing. I have to go after her. "Maria," David whispered, gripping my hand weakly. "Don't, it's too dangerous." But deep inside, I knew I couldn't stay. My mother's life depended on me. I stood, my body trembling but my mind burning with determination. "I'm going after them." The officers tried to stop me, but before they could, a sharp noise rang out in the distance, another gunshot. Everyone froze. "Was that outside?" one officer asked, rushing toward the door. My heart nearly stopped. "Mother!" And then, as if the nightmare couldn't get worse, one of the guests stumbled back inside the church, his face pale with terror. "He's taken her into the car," the man stammered. "He's driving away with her." The air left my lungs. My father, no, Simeone, had taken my mother hostage, and now he was on the run. I stumbled forward, my voice breaking. "We have to stop him before it's too late." The air was thick with fear, the kind that pressed against your chest and made every breath feel stolen. Simeone stood in the middle of the church, his wild eyes darting between the police at the entrance and Sandra, who trembled in his grasp. His hand tightened around the knife he held to her throat, and every movement seemed louder than thunder. "Don't come closer," Simeone roared. His voice was raw, filled with rage and desperation. "One step and she dies right here." The policemen froze, their guns raised but their eyes cautious. Maria felt her knees weaken as she clutched Samuel's arm. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She wanted to scream, to run, to stop the madness, but her body refused to move. "Dad, please." Maria finally cried out, her voice breaking. "You don't have to do this. Let her go. We can fix this, please." But Simeone laughed, a dark, broken laugh. "Fix this? You think anything can be fixed after today? She lied to me. She destroyed my life." He shoved Sandra forward, making her stumble. "And you," he pointed the knife toward Maria. "You dare to stand against your own father?" The church was filled with whispers. Guests covered their mouths in shock, children cried, and elders muttered prayers under their breath. It felt like the walls themselves were trembling with the weight of Simeone's fury. Sandra's eyes were filled with pain, but also strength. "Simeone, please. Think of Maria. Think of our daughter. This isn't the man I married. You can stop this. It's not too late." For a fleeting second, something flickered in Simeone's eyes, hesitation. But it was quickly crushed by the storm inside him. He pushed Sandra harder, making her cry out in pain. "Enough!" Simeone roared again. "If I can't have peace, then nobody will." The police commander, a stern man with steady hands, took a step forward. "Mr. Simeone," he said calmly, "let her go. We don't want bloodshed. Put down the weapon and let us talk." "Talk?" Simeone sneered. "You don't understand." "Nobody understands what it's like to be betrayed by the one person you trusted most." Maria's heart pounded so loudly it drowned out the murmurs. She looked at Samuel, whose face was pale with fear. She knew something had to be done, or this would end in tragedy. Gathering all the courage in her trembling body, Maria stepped forward. "Dad, if you hurt her, you'll lose me forever," she said firmly. Her voice shook, but her words carried the weight of truth. "You'll have nothing left. Not love, not family, not even me." Simeone's chest heaved. His grip on Sandra tightened for a moment, then loosened. His face twisted in pain, torn between rage and despair. "Maria," he whispered, his voice breaking. "You don't understand." Suddenly, in that split second of hesitation, one of the policemen moved. A shot rang out, not into Simeone, but into the ceiling, startling him. He stumbled, releasing Sandra's arm just enough for her to wrench free. She fell into Maria's embrace, sobbing. "Now!" shouted the commander. In a blur, officers rushed forward, tackling Simeone to the ground. He struggled, roaring like a wounded beast, but the handcuffs clicked shut around his wrists. His knife clattered to the floor, useless. The church fell silent, then erupted in cries, prayers, and shouts of relief. Maria held Sandra tightly, her tears soaking into her mother's shoulder. Samuel wrapped his arms around them both. For the first time that day, Maria felt a sliver of hope. But as Simeone was dragged out, his eyes locked on Maria. They weren't defeated, no. They burned with something else. "This isn't over," he shouted, his voice echoing off the church walls. "Maria, you'll see me again. You'll all see me again." The words chilled Maria to her bones. Even with Simeone gone, she knew his shadow would linger. Maria's father has been taken away, but his chilling words promise this nightmare isn't truly over. Do you think Simeone will return? And what will happen to Maria's fragile new happiness? Stay tuned for the next chapter to see how Maria's life changes after this day of horror. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the shocking twists to come. And share in the comments, what do you think Simeone meant by "this isn't over"? The courthouse was silent as Maria walked in, her steps echoing on the marble floor. Cameras flashed outside, reporters shouted her name, and whispers filled the room. Everyone wanted to know the fate of Simeone, the man who had turned her wedding into a nightmare, who had taken her father's life, and who had shattered her world in front of everyone. Sandra sat beside Maria, her hand trembling as she gripped her daughter's fingers. Both women wore black dresses, their eyes still swollen from endless nights of crying. But Maria's gaze was sharper now. She was no longer the frightened bride. She was a woman ready to stand for justice. The judge entered. Court is in session. Simeone was led in, his hands cuffed tightly, but his smirk still unchanged. He turned toward Maria, his eyes glinting with arrogance. "You think you've won?" he whispered, his voice venomous. Maria lifted her chin. "This time, Simeone, you can't hide behind lies." The trial began. Witnesses came forward, neighbors who had heard screams, police officers who had rushed in on that bloody night, and even the church members who had seen Simeone's rage during the wedding. Piece by piece, the truth unfolded. But Simeone's lawyer twisted every fact, painting him as the victim of a tragic misunderstanding. When Sandra took the stand, her voice cracked. "He threatened me with a knife. He said he would kill me if I told anyone. I lived in fear for years." Simeone suddenly shouted, "She's lying." His voice boomed across the courtroom, making even the judge slam the gavel. Maria stood, her voice breaking but strong. "Enough." She pointed at him. "You abused, you threatened, and you destroyed lives. Today you answer for it." The room fell silent. The jury's faces were grave. The judge gave his final words. "This court finds Simeone guilty on all counts." Sandra collapsed into tears, hugging Maria tightly. The chains clinked as Simeone was dragged away, his smirk finally gone. Yet, even in that moment of victory, Maria felt a hollow ache. Justice had been served, but scars remained. Outside, the reporters swarmed again, shouting questions. Maria simply said, "This is not the end. Healing is harder than justice, but we will try." She and her mother walked away hand in hand, toward an uncertain future, but with one truth: they were free at last. What a journey this has been: pain, loss, but also courage and justice. Do you think Maria and Sandra will ever truly heal after everything Simeone put them through? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the final chapter of the story. The ending will shock you even more than the trial. Stay tuned. The night air felt heavy as Maria stood outside the police station, her heart pounding so loudly it echoed in her ears. She had just confronted Simeone inside, and though he was behind bars now, she knew this wasn't the end. His eyes, the way they burned with fury even through the bars, told her that he wasn't finished with her or her mother. Sandra trembled beside her, clutching her shawl tighter around her frail shoulders. "Maria," she whispered, "he won't forgive us."
He will find a way out.
"Simeone always finds a way." Maria turned to her, forcing bravery into her voice even though her stomach was tied in knots. "Not this time, Mama. I won't let him hurt you again. I won't let him hurt any of us." But deep down, Maria wasn't so sure. Simeone had friends, influence, and a cunning mind. Even now, Maria feared he would slip through the cracks of the justice system. The next morning, Maria woke up to news that sent shivers down her spine. A guard at the station had been bribed. Simeone was gone. The world around her spun. No, this can't be real," Maria muttered, her voice breaking as she dropped the phone. Sandra gasped and began to cry. Within hours, rumors spread through town that Simeone had been spotted lurking near Maria's home. The police searched, but he was always a step ahead, like a shadow that refused to disappear. Maria knew then that she couldn't keep waiting for the law to protect her. She had to take matters into her own hands. That evening, she stood in front of her mirror, looking at her pale face, her wedding dress still hanging in the corner, stained with blood. She clenched her fists. If it's a war he wants, then it's a war he'll get. She packed a bag, filled it with documents, her phone, and the last of her father's old shotgun shells that had been hidden away in the house. Simeone had destroyed her innocence, her peace, and her wedding. But she would not let him take her mother too. "Maria, what are you doing?" Sandra asked nervously. Maria looked into her mother's eyes with a determination she had never felt before. "I'm ending this, Mama. Once and for all." That night, As darkness covered the town, Maria set out to face the man who had haunted her life since childhood. Simeone was waiting for her, standing under the dim street lamp at the edge of town, his grin cruel and mocking. "So, the little bride finally found her courage," he sneered, his hands tucked into his coat. "Come to finish what you started in that church?" Maria's voice didn't shake this time. "No, Simeone. I've come to finish you." The confrontation that followed would change everything forever. The final battle between Maria and Simeone has begun. Will Maria finally defeat the man who ruined her life, or will Simeone's darkness consume her once more? Don't miss the shocking twist that's coming in the next chapter. Make sure you like this video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss how this story ends. And let us know in the comments, do you think Maria has the strength to stop him for good? The hospital room was heavy with silence, broken only by the steady beep of Maria's monitor. Her body was weak, but her spirit was burning with fire. She knew she couldn't let Simeone win, not after everything he had done to her, her mother, and the life she had dreamed of building with David. When David entered, his eyes were bloodshot from sleepless nights. He sat beside her bed, holding her hand gently as if afraid she might break apart. "Maria," he whispered, "I don't care what Simeone said about the past. I love you. Nothing he could reveal will change that." Tears welled in Maria's eyes. For the first time since her wedding day turned into chaos, she felt a flicker of hope. "David, what if he doesn't stop? What if he comes back for us?" David's jaw tightened. "Then we fight back. Together." That night, long after visiting hours ended, the door creaked open. Maria's heart raced. Was it Simeone? But instead, it was Sandra, pale and trembling, her eyes swollen from crying. "Maria," she whispered, "I need to tell you everything." Sandra confessed how Simeone had manipulated her, threatened her, and twisted her into silence for years. She explained how he had lied about the past, convincing Maria that she was worthless and undeserving of love. "He wanted to control you, just like he controlled me," Sandra sobbed. "But I couldn't protect you. I was too afraid." Maria gripped her mother's hands. For the first time, she saw Sandra not as a failure, but as another victim of Simeone's cruelty. Meanwhile, outside the hospital, detectives were building their case. Simeone had vanished after escaping the scene of the stabbing, but they knew he would try to strike again. They approached Maria the next day. "We need you to help us," one officer said. "If we set a trap, he'll come for you." David immediately shook his head.
No.
"She's been through enough. You're not using her as bait." But Maria surprised them all. "If this is the only way to end it," she said, voice steady, "then I'll do it. I won't live my life running from him." A week later, Maria returned home under police surveillance. Hidden cameras filled the house, and plainclothes officers hid nearby. David refused to leave her side, standing tall as her shield. At midnight, the back door creaked open. Simeone. His figure moved like a shadow, knife glinting under the faint moonlight. His eyes burned with obsession as he whispered, "Maria, you'll never belong to him. You're mine. You'll always be mine." Maria's heart pounded, but she stood her ground. "No, Simeone.
You don't own me.
You don't own my mother. You don't own my life." He lunged. But before the blade could reach her, lights blazed on. Police stormed in. David tackled Simeone to the ground with a force fueled by love and fury. This time, there was no escape. Handcuffs clicked shut, and Simeone screamed as he was dragged away, his empire of fear collapsing at last. Maria collapsed into David's arms, shaking with relief. Sandra rushed to her side, holding her daughter as though she'd never let go again. "It's over," Sandra whispered. "It's finally over." Maria's tears fell, not from pain this time, but from release. For the first time, she felt the chains of Simeone's shadow breaking apart. But deep inside, she knew the scars, both seen and unseen, would take time to heal. Still, as she looked at David, Sandra, and the officers around her, Maria understood one thing: she wasn't alone anymore. And that gave her strength. Maria may have survived Simeone's last attack, but can a heart so broken ever fully heal? And what will justice look like now that Simeone has been caught? Stay tuned for the final chapter, where Maria faces the courtroom, the truth, and a choice that will define the rest of her life. If you've been gripped by this story so far, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps bring more powerful stories like this to life. The courtroom was silent, the kind of silence that pressed on Maria's chest like a heavy stone. Every face was turned toward her as she sat on the witness stand, her trembling hands clutching the small wooden cross her mother had given her years ago. Across the room, Simeone sat with his head bowed, chains clinking against his wrists, his once proud face reduced to shadows. The judge cleared his throat. "Maria, please continue your testimony." Maria swallowed hard, her voice breaking. "That night, my wedding night, he didn't just destroy my future. He destroyed my trust, my sense of safety, everything I thought I knew about family." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Maria's mother, Sandra, dabbed tears from her eyes. Clara gripped her arm tightly, whispering, "You're strong. Keep going." Maria raised her chin, looking straight at Simeone. "You thought you owned me. You thought your power would silence me forever. But today, I stand here, not as your victim, but as your survivor. And I will never let you break me again." Gasps filled the courtroom. Simeone sneered, but said nothing. The judge leaned forward. "Thank you, Maria. You've shown extraordinary courage." After days of testimony, the verdict came. The jury foreman stood, his voice steady. "We find the defendant guilty on all counts." The room erupted. Sandra sobbed in relief. Clara hugged Maria tightly, and even strangers in the gallery clapped quietly. Simeone slammed his fists on the table, shouting, "This isn't over," before officers dragged him away. Maria felt her knees weaken, but she stood tall. For the first time in years, she felt free. Later that evening, Maria and her family gathered at home. The smell of Sandra's warm stew filled the kitchen. Clara placed a gentle hand on her sister's shoulder. "Maria, you fought the fight of your life, and you won. You're our hero." Maria smiled faintly. "No, Clara. We're survivors together. This isn't just my victory, it's ours." The night sky was clear, stars glittering like tiny promises of hope. Maria stood at the window, whispering a silent prayer. "Thank you for carrying me through the storm." At that moment, she knew her story was far from over, but her new beginning had just begun. Maria's journey reminds us that even in the darkest battles, the human spirit can shine brighter than any cruelty. She was silenced, broken, and betrayed, but she rose again. If Maria's courage touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss stories like this one. And in the comments, tell us, what does survival mean to you? Because sometimes sharing your voice is the first step to healing.